This podcast is brought to you in part by Academy Travel at MickeyVacations.com. Academy Travel is the official travel sponsor of the Pirates and Princesses podcast, and we can't recommend them enough. Go to MickeyVacations.com/PNP. That's MickeyVacations.com/PNP to get started on your next Disney dream vacation today. And now on with the show. Disneyland versus Disney World. The gloves are off. Well, maybe the gloves aren't off. But we're going to talk about some of the differences between Disneyland and Walt Disney World on this episode of Pirates and Princesses, so stick around.
A pirate's life for me.
Oh, hello there. So glad you could come along. I put a spell on you.
Grid is live. Initiate light cycle battle.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
For a safe trip, remain seated, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the cabin. Be sure to watch your children, and no smoking, please.
Welcome to the Pirates and Princesses podcast.
We're a different kind of Disney podcast. We do it our way.
We talk about Disney parks, Disney movies, TV, video games.
Anything Disney.
I'm your host, Thom Pratt.
And I'm your other host, Kam Pratt.
Welcome back to Pirates and Princesses. As always, I'm your host, Thom Pratt, and I'm joined by my lovely wife, Cambria Pratt. And I remembered her name in this episode.
You got it right off. Yes, it's me, Cambria.
Yeah.
Or Cam. People call me
or
both.
Or Cam.
They call me other things too, but we're not going to talk about that.
No, we're not going to talk about this family-friendly show. Anyway, this episode we're going to talk a little bit. I mean, this is kind of the tip of the iceberg, but we'll talk a little bit about some of the differences between Disneyland and Walt Disney World.
Well, you're going to talk. I'm going to chime in because I wasn't to both.
Yeah.
You've been to, but we used to go to Disneyland.
I used to go to Disneyland all the time. I actually had never been to Walt Disney World, and now I lived in California. When I was a kid and a teenager, off and on we went back and forth. But so I went to Disneyland many times over the summers. Walt Disney World, for me, I didn't go until I was an adult. So
yes, that's why I took you.
Yeah,
with me.
so it was so. So for me, it was kind of for me, Disneyland was always the original Disney park, and so for the longest time, I always compared everything to Disneyland. Well, this is different than Disneyland. Now going back out to Disneyland for the first time in a number of years, I went out in December. It was oh, hey, this is different than Disney World.
See,
and this is different than Disney World.
This is different
and,
because I'm Disney World. I've never been to
right.
Disneyland.
So and you have very rabid fans, I think, of each park.
I'm sorry, I'll get those people foaming at the mouth.
Yeah, it's East
people.
Coast versus West Coast.
How dare you say yours is better? I'm going to rip your face off. And that's not what you're talking about.
No, what I'm talking about is some of the differences because, everybody thinks that Disneyland is, if you're at Disney World, you're oh, it's just like Disney World, but smaller. No, it's a little more complicated than that.
It's yes and no.
And same with Disneyland. People were Disney World's it's just the same thing, it's just bigger. And
right.
No, it's not. So, and this is kind of an interesting because, Disney World, I kind of run into this with people who are Disney World fans. They've never maybe even been to, Cam has never been to Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to change that this year.
Yeah, so hopefully change it this year. Hopefully.
My kids have never been to Disneyland.
They very much want to go, especially
our
daughter. She's all about it.
And, so you've got that, and then you've got, the when I was in Disneyland, and I was actually live streaming from the Wine in the Haunted Mansion, people were asking me, what's Disney World like? I'm
yeah.
How can you not know? And then I'm realizing, these are probably, California locals, and they've never...
Well, we'll go back to that. I want to talk about that later.
Don't see the point in flying out to
Well,
Orlando.
let's start about... Okay, so you went to Disneyland, and let's start from the time you leave. Well, first of all, when you get to the Disneyland, you go to your hotel. How are the differences?
Okay, well, the biggest difference is, they do have a... I went through LAX. You can also go through John Wayne, which is closer. You're not, unless you schedule a ride, they don't have the Magical Express pick you up. They've got, they have a service that will pick you up, but it costs money. So it does cost money to get from the, whichever airport you're coming in from to the hotel. It's just going to. So, But I stayed at the Disneyland Hotel, which when I used to go to Disneyland was across the street, because where California Adventure is now used to be a parking lot.
Yeah, you told me that.
And the
yeah.
Disneyland Hotel, the monorail used to take you over by the Disneyland Hotel, which I think at that point was owned by another company. It wasn't Disney that owned it, but it's a very historic hotel.
Well, it looks more like the old hotels you'd picture, in like a city, or even like Disney Springs hotels. They're taller.
Right, it's a
and
traditional hotel. It's not like the
themed hotels you get at Disney World.
Right, most of them have the rooms, are almost like motels almost, because you've got, the rooms are sort of, facing the doors, facing out, and this actually has your elevator and your hallways and your, everything,
Well,
lobby.
there's different areas that are themed, you said?
Yeah, there are 3 different towers at the Disneyland Hotel. You've got the Fantasy Tower, which is like Fantasyland, the Adventure Tower, and the Frontier Tower, which is like Frontierland. I say the
you?
Adventure.
Adventure.
As in the Adventure Tower.
If I was going to pick one, Adventure's where I'd go.
I like the Adventure.
I like Adventure.
Yeah, I did. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I mean, a lot of historic photos of Walt in early Disneyland, and just the whole hotel. I mean, it's old, but that's not a bad thing. There's a lot of history with the Disneyland Hotel, and it feels more like historic Disneyland. Well, some of the things that jumped at me at the Disneyland Hotel, it's just, I don't know, I can't quite put my finger on it, and I think people who have been to both will get this. There's a different vibe at Disneyland, even with the cast members, than there is at Walt Disney World. I can't really put my finger on it, but it almost feels like, not that they're happier to be there than Walt Disney World employees, but I don't know. It was a different, I can't quite put my finger on what it is about Disneyland.
It could be the way that the culture is there too. How people are people in California are a lot more laid back, usually people on the East Coast are, for example.
I think that's part of it.
So I've been out to California, and I've been out there for a while. I've been over here on the East Coast, up by New York, and where we're at, and people here are a lot more uptight than people over maybe in California. They're more like chill, and
I think that's it. I really think that's it. And I think a lot of it is, this particular park deals mostly with, I think, locals, people from the Los Angeles area, and I think because of that, you've just got a more chill. And then, that's very much it. The whole atmosphere out there is a lot more laid back.
Well, you don't have all the rushing as you have to do too, which you're going to discuss.
I am going to discuss this.
Honestly, I think I'd be more chill too if I wasn't like, oh my gosh, about to catch that bus.
Yeah, okay. So if you stay on property, which I thoroughly recommend you stay on property, they have 3 hotels at Disneyland. Again, Disneyland Hotel, it's old, but it's good. I do like it, and it's very historic. So where I was at in the Adventure Tower was great, because I basically went down the elevator, walked out the doors, did a right turn, and walked across the street, and I was in Disney Springs. Or not Disney Springs, I'm sorry. Downtown Disney. It's still downtown Disney out there. See, there's a difference.
It's downtown Disney District.
Yes. So now, really, it's just like a straight walk from the Disneyland Hotel into the parks. I mean,
it's not like when you go to the hotels at Disney World, you have to walk to the bus.
Right.
And then, when you get to the bus stop, you have to walk from the bus stop clear to the park entrance.
Right. The distance from the hotel to the entrance of Disneyland or California Adventure is about the distance you would to go catch a bus at Disney Springs. It's really not much of a walk at all. And they do a bag check. Again, even the bag checks don't seem as stressed out as they are at Disney World. You do your bag check, and you walk right into downtown Disney. You walk through. It's straight. It's not confusing. And then you're at Disneyland, and you go to your left for Disneyland and your right for California Adventure. Everything is centrally located. I mean, I would actually say, if you, because of everything being close and not having to deal with the buses and all of that chaos.
The bus is a stressor, or just transportation in general.
Right.
It can be really stressful.
I would say, if you were on the fence about which park to visit and you have small children, I would actually recommend that if you have the ability to go to either one.
Right, because flights with small children isn't always a good thing.
If you have the ability to go either one, and it's going to be the same difference either way, I would actually say go to Disneyland first, because it's not as stressful. I mean, seriously,
less stressful.
Walk out of the hotel and walk into the parks. It's like everything is there. Downtown Disney is there. There's not, there are not as many parks, But they put a lot of attractions in the parks that
And the
are
bus,
there.
I mean, just getting around, even not just buses, other transportation too, just getting around from a hotel to even like Magic Kingdom, if you're like a Pop Century, it could take a while.
Yeah, I mean, I've had before where, I just had to go back to the hotel room. I think it was Port Orleans. I was doing a media thing, and I just had to go back to the hotel room, get my camera stuff around, and go back, and it took like 2 hours.
I know I missed the bus.
It was crazy.
Literally missed the bus when I was picking up a souvenir for somebody from Magic Kingdom, and I waited for over 20 minutes for another one to come. And and then plus it was really like 20 minutes back to the room or whatever. And it would have been nice.
Then you have to go through the bag check again. You have to go through the everything again.
And if you had been close, you could just walk back to the hotel, but back out in like the time you waited for the bus. So I mean, I do think that's awesome.
I timed it the one day. I think from Disneyland Hotel to the main gate of Disneyland, I think it was less than 10 minutes if you don't stop. So you just walk it straight shot, and it was great, and that's great. And I like. This is why, I'm also a big advocate of staying on property at Disney World if you can do it, because once you're there, you're there. And there's nothing to take you out of the vacation. And Disneyland, that's even more true than it is in Disney World, where you stay at a Disney hotel and you're there. Whether it's the Disneyland hotel or you're staying at the California, Grand Californian. Because again, you walk right out into the park. It's like right there.
Yeah, that one's over the California Adventure.
Yeah.
So I mean that's nice, and then also you get into park early.
Yeah, you get in a couple hours early.
Like you do the extra magic hours if you're staying at Magic Kingdom.
But you don't have to pay for
Walt
it.
Disney World.
But you don't have to pay for it.
Well,
it's not like it's like the extra.
hours.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the extra morning magic hours. You get to go in the park. I think it's 2 hours early. So Disneyland, I know the first day I was there, I went in. And I'm like, are we open? Because you didn't have the mob at the gates trying to get in like you have at Disney
trampled.
We get trampled. And I went in. I had a leisurely stroll down Main Street. There was no mob. I got a coffee. I sat on a bench. People watched.
You should have gone and rode some things.
I did. I jumped on. There was no wait time for Jungle Cruise, Tiki Room. Haunted Mansion didn't even have much of a wait. So I mean, that's another advantage of staying on property, because people are like, oh, I can get a cheaper hotel, because there are a lot of hotels near Disneyland. You can actually see them.
They are cheaper.
And they're cheaper. Yeah, they are. But you know what? I think just the extra time and the convenience, I think it's worth paying to stay at the Disney Resort. I mean, if it's only like $100 a night difference or whatever it is, like just do it, because you're going to get so much extra time. And if you're dead tired, and that's another thing too I loved about having the hotels within walking distance. If you're dead tired at the end of the night, it's not that far.
Yeah, you don't have to wait 20 minutes for a bus, 20 minutes back to your hotel.
Right, even the monorail,
travel time, easy.
At Disney World can be a hassle to get on the monorail and go back. Now the monorails here are different. For one thing, they're smaller. They're a lot smaller. They weren't really.
They have no windows.
They had the windows open when I was, because they don't have the moisture, they don't have the dampness, and
they had to have some windows depending on the seasons.
Right, and they're not going as far as the monorails in Disney World, where they're an actual transportation system. The monorail in Disneyland is more of a ride and like a visual thing. It's almost more like the People Mover.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool. It does a cool little. Now I did take it. You can take it from the Disneyland Hotel. They have it as soon as you get into downtown Disney. They have a monorail station if you want to go into. Because it used to be that they would take you over across the parking lot and all that. So it had more of a purpose than it does now, I think. But in this case, it was just like, I took it the one day just to go for a ride on the monorail. And it's cool because you go through Tomorrowland, and it's very much like the People Mover, where it tells you what you're looking at, and it does a few kind of like corkscrews and everything around. It's pretty fun. But again, it's more the monorails in Disneyland are more, they're not really practical, they're more like entertainment. Whereas Disney World, they're practical because they get you to the parks from the outlying hotels. Yeah.
So what else? I mean, like, okay, let's start with Disneyland. What did you notice? Like, everybody says that Disneyland's like the Magic Kingdom. So what did you see? What do you think?
It is. Now, it's like Bizarro Magic Kingdom. Again, going back to it,
because they might say Magic Kingdom is Bizarro
right,
Disneyland,
and I did
it's
that.
all about your point.
The first time I went to Disney World, I was making all these comparisons about, oh, this is at Disneyland, this is over here. At Disneyland, this is over there. This is different there, because that was my reference I had. But it's Main Street is still Main Street, but it's everything's a little bit smaller, a little more compact. But that's not a bad thing. I will say that it seems cleaner. I don't know if it's because of the size of the park, or maybe just I don't know. But Disneyland on the whole just seems like there's a little more TLC involved. And I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's not like Disney World where some things feel unfinished, or you get the vibe that people don't care so much about things sometimes. Maybe again that's just the sheer amount of guests that they're shoving through, Magic Kingdom especially. It gets absolutely crazy. But when I was there, Disneyland, the people, even the people, waiting for the parade. I waited for the. Now I was out there a couple weeks before Christmas, and I watched the Christmas parade, and they were very polite. They were. We did not have
people shoving their kids in front of you, saying, "Hey, can my kids sit in front of you to watch the parade?" And I'm going to shove myself in front too.
Right, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm sure it absolutely does happen. But my experience there was that most of the people were very, very polite. And
at least the parades were different too.
The parades are different out there. Yeah, they don't run it straight through like they do at Disney World. Instead, they take a break like after each set of floats, and they let people cross the street and all that. So it's sort of like New York waiting for a stoplight, and then everybody goes across, and then they resume the parade. But it works. I mean, it's a little weird, but it works. Obviously, you get to see the castle at the end of Main Street, but you're not going to see Cinderella Castle, which is massive, and Sleeping Beauty Castle. But I don't remember there being like photo pass people the whole way down the street blocking the view either.
Cinderella Castle is like every few steps there's a photo pass person.
Yeah, I mean, you do now later at night because again, I think it's more of a local park. You get more people coming in, and they're doing selfies and all that junk. But again, I mean, it just seemed like people there. I can't quite put my finger on it. I wish I could. I wish I knew exactly what the issue was. Maybe it's the culture out there. Maybe it's the people running. But it just seemed like the people were more into their experience.
Like a completely different feel from other parts.
It's not completely different. I mean, it's still a Disney.
I mean, like, I don't know, the vibe's different between the two. So it just feels. It is like visiting a different place.
It is. It feels like. I mean, I'll be honest. It feels like the Disneyland cares a little bit more about
Disney World.
Can I say that? I mean, I'm not trying to say that Disney World doesn't, but it just seems like, I don't know, there just seems to be more pride, I think, in Disneyland.
I think with Disney World, it's just so big, so many parks, and you have so much money to go around. Right. I think that they can't, and people get moved a lot too. Yeah. I think that they can't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's harder to keep on top of.
I think it's management. Yeah, because you can manage 2 theme parks, a tiny shopping district, and 3 hotels a lot more easier than 4 massive parks, like a cajillion hotels and golf courses and all this.
When I was
water
a kid,
parks.
Back when it was just Magic Kingdom and Epcot at Walt Disney World, my parents used to talk about how it was really clean, and it was like as soon as they finished one of the park painting, they go from one to the other each year, and as soon as it was finished, it'd start all over again. Right. And it was always it was always fresh, it was always kept up. And I think with the addition of more parks and all the other, like you said, hotels, resorts, and ESPN and all that, it's just a lot to maintain.
Right, and I think that right there, that is the difference. I think Disneyland. I mean, I love Disney World. I'm always going to love Disney World, but I think Disneyland is right-sized. Like you said, it was probably akin to when Disney World was just the 2 parks and a couple of hotels.
Nothing they don't keep up. It's just easier to keep up.
Right. It's just very hard to keep up with just all the sheer size of Disney World.
Well, let's keep you on track here because we're just going on and on about the same thing.
No. I don't want to. I don't want to come across like I'm bashing because I'm not. I love Disney World. I'm not bashing Disney World.
The train. You said the train is really different. Well, they opened it. They just redid.
They just redid the train, yes. And I'm trying to, my memory.
I hear it's very pretty.
It's very nice.
I'm so upset because he live streamed this
I did.
On the Kingdom Insider. And I thought, okay, cool. I'll go back and watch the videos later because I really wanted to see the train. And I was in the middle of work, so I couldn't do it. And then when I went to watch the videos, there was the first day he was there, he had the right app. The second day, the app had to be, he tried to reload it because it wasn't working properly.
I couldn't live stream. Facebook Pages Manager failed me. So I deleted it and got their video creator app.
But you couldn't put it back on.
And I couldn't put it back on because it was down, or it must have been broken or something. So then I downloaded the new one, which was a Facebook creator app or whatever, and used that, thinking it was going to work like Pages. But here it did not save any of the videos.
Because you didn't hit to save it after.
Right. You had to actually go into the settings.
So I was very upset I didn't get to see it. But you said, I mean, it's a lot different than Disney World because Disney World just goes around. It basically has 2 stops. By the Main Street, and then again over by we're like, is it 4? Is it 4?
I think it's 4.
I forget where it is. We only done it a few times.
Like,
but each of the corners have whatever, and it's just like you're just going around looking at stuff, but But I think Disneyland, they put a lot more theming into it.
Well, I think that probably goes back to Walt's love of trains. Like Disneyland started because Walt had toy trains in his backyard, and he wanted to do a theme park, and the train was a central thing. But there's so much more to look at on the Disneyland Railroad. I mean, they've got little dioramas and scenes, and then the biggest one for fans of the Universe of Energy (RIP) is that between Tomorrowland and Main Street, the very last one, you go through the Primeval World, which has almost identical animatronics to those that were in Ellen's Energy Adventure, except they're behind glass. But it's the same scenes.
Same idea.
So it's really cool to go through that, you know. And again, it sort of reminds me more of the People Mover in Disney World, where you have things. It's transportation, but you also have a lot to look at.
Well, I think that's really added the waterfalls and some different things around it because that's really pretty to see around the lake.
It was.
I actually want it. That's one thing. If we go, I'm very excited to see is the train. And now you said that the Haunted Mansion was a lot different too. It's shorter.
It is shorter, and I've forgotten how short it is compared to. Now I saw it with the Christmas overlay, the Nightmare Before Christmas overlay. But there are a lot of scenes in Disney World's Haunted Mansion that are not in the original Disneyland version. And I'm gonna say, just in this, you know, like if we're gonna compare apples to apples, I have to say that Disney World's Haunted Mansion is superior. For a number of reasons. I mean, one, just the building itself. Like, I understand when they were doing the Haunted Mansion, they weren't even sure what they were going to put inside.
What happened was they knew they were going to put something in. They weren't sure if it was going to be a walk-through ride. But the building, he didn't want it to be like looking like a decrepit building. Right. Like, it had to be, you know, pristine building. And it sat there as a shell until the ride got put in. But that's why it looks like completely different, because it looks like you wouldn't know it was a haunted mansion. Yeah. Where the Haunted Mansion at Disney World, you know it's the Haunted Mansion. Right, you know, right. And I think that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, and I understand Walt's reasoning for that, especially with it being over by New Orleans. You don't want to, you know, throw
this
off
New Orleans Square there instead of...
New Orleans Square, that's another thing that does not exist in Critter Country. That's another, but it's basically...
And they still have Toontown.
Yes, they still have Toontown. And it's actually, their Toontown is better than ours ever were.
Ever was.
It's
gone now.
It's gone. But from what I remember of Toontown, our Toontown was pretty dirty, actually.
Well, at that point, they were going to tear it down in a few months. They didn't care anymore.
But this Toontown's nice. Anyway, so the Haunted Mansion is a lot shorter. I mean, it's still an amazing ride, and this is the original version of it, but it's shorter. Now, likewise, Pirates is longer. Pirates
I knew that. And it's a different order, too.
Things are moved around a little bit. And again, that's the original version of it. You know, so those are, I mean, you know, just, I mean, if we're going to do attraction, you know, apples to apples, Thunder Mountain, I did get to ride it with the special effects. They're okay. I mean, it wasn't like, I guess I expected more, but it's basically the same ride as Disney World. It did seem a little rougher, and I'm not sure why. Now, they did have a new track put in for that, but it's basically the same.
You should have ridden it, because of this way they added the ghost to it.
To what? The
Thunder Mountain.
I did ride Thunder Mountain.
You did, I know you did ride Thunder Mountain, did you?
Yeah.
It was Matterhorn you didn't ride.
No, it was Matterhorn.
Did you see the ghost thing? You didn't tell me about it.
I didn't see any ghosts.
But they added ghosts to it.
No, they had explosions.
Oh, man, that's what it was.
I don't know.
Now, you were in line for the Haunted Mansion. That's people were asking you questions.
Yeah, no,
it was kind of funny. I did see this.
This was really interesting. So I'm talking to people, and they're asking me. Actually, the people.
I thought he was crazy at first.
The people in the live stream were asking me what the differences were between Disneyland and Disney World. And meanwhile, there were people at Disneyland asking me about Disney World. And after I ended the live stream, I actually went out having a conversation with a young couple who they go to Disneyland and Tokyo Disney like all the time. And so while we're waiting in line, we're having this conversation about some different.
Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're having this conversation about all the differences between, you know, the attractions and, you know, the queues and all that. And they're like, yeah, one of these days we're going to get to Disney World. And I'm like, wait, you can go to Tokyo, but you can't go to Orlando. And I'm like, well, to think about it, you know,
that's closer. California's
right,
closer.
Right, you're on the West Coast. So I'm like, oh, yeah. So,
Florida. I mean, that's a lot further for them.
Yeah, and she has family over there, too. So, but, you know, I always want to go to Tokyo Disneyland.
I do. I want to go to Tokyo.
That's definitely on the list.
I want to see Disney Seas.
Definitely on the list. But, yeah, so it was interesting, though, to see most of the people that I talked to in Disneyland just struck up casual conversation with had never been to Disney World. Like, they just don't see a point because they're like, it's the same thing, right? Just bigger. No.
Which,
I mean, it's similar.
A lot of differences you see are in California Adventure, too, though, because we don't have California Adventure at Walt Disney World. And the California Adventure there has like the Radiator Springs.
Yes.
And the Cars Land, and it had the pier, which is going to be rethemed for Pixar Pier now.
Yeah.
And it has rides from, and same with Disneyland, rides from different parks at Walt Disney World.
Right.
But they're in either Disneyland or California Adventure. They're not in like a separate.
Right, and that's sort of like I joked. I said it's sort of like a Frankensteining of like Hollywood Studios and Epcot in Animal Kingdom, because you have attractions from all of those parks in Disney World, but then they sort of put them all into California Adventure, but they retheme them, and it actually works out really well. Like Soarin' is in Pacific Northwest area of
I think
the
the
park.
Pacific Northwest area sounds awesome.
Yeah, which is really cool. It's over by the Grand Californian Hotel, which walks directly into the park. But you've got the hangars there, and you've got some old planes outside.
I would love to see that.
It was very, very cool.
My parents are both pilots. My parents ran the local airport, and I grew up around airplanes and things, and I think they would love that. I'd love to see that.
Well, when I lived in California, I lived in Northern California, and we used to go even further north to go to a cabin, which is our family's cabin. We used to go up there. And so it for me, it was like, this reminds me of the redwood trees and the whole thing. It reminded me very much of that. So, which was pretty cool. And, I really enjoyed that. And just seeing the differences, between the attractions. Now, it does seem like they're trying very hard to mix it up on both coasts. Like, they rethemed Tower of Terror for, and eventually they're probably going to put like a Marvel section out there. So I mean...
I'm sure they are. They have Marvel characters now and stuff. They're doing more and more with that.
So it's, it's pretty cool. People were like, don't... I already go to Disney World. I don't need to go to Disneyland. I'm like, yeah, but here's the difference, and this might be part of that. It's like this. Everybody talks about, well, Walt wouldn't have wanted this for Disney World, and Walt wouldn't have wanted that. I hate to break it to you, but Walt was gone by the time Disney World opened. Mm-hmm. He had been dead for 5 years by the time. He had ideas of what he wanted, but it wasn't Walt who actually built Walt Disney World.
Epcot wasn't anything like what Epcot is.
No, actually, I think Walt would be very disappointed in the Epcot, because it wasn't what he wanted. Well, actually, I don't know. I think Future World, I think he actually would have enjoyed, but it was not what he was originally thinking. Mm-hmm. But Disneyland, that is 100% Walt. Mm-hmm. That was Walt.
Except for California Adventure.
Except for California Adventure. I'm not talking about, but I'm saying it's worth going to just to see, this is the park that Walt built. This is the park that Walt walked the streets of.
Yeah, I really want to see it. It sounds really awesome.
And people just, it's so weird. Like, we see comments even on Facebook, well, they're changing Hollywood Studios. Walt would hate that. Walt had nothing to do with Hollywood Studios.
Well, Hollywood Studios, like California Adventure had a lot of the feel of...
Yes, California Adventure... you walk into California Adventure and you're walking down this...
Even the entry looks like Hollywood Studios.
Yes.
It looks just like Hollywood Studios.
It's like bizarro Hollywood Studios. Like, you walk in and you're like, wow, this is just like Hollywood Studios. And then you do a turn and you see the pier and you see Cars Land and you see, Grizzly Peak, and you're like, oh, I'm nowhere near... This is not Hollywood Studios anymore. But there are a lot of similarities. Like the Art Deco font and everything.
So then, after you get past there, so what you have? Okay, so tell us about
Cars Land. I actually did not get a chance to ride Radiator Springs Racers. The line was very, very long, and I had a lot of ground to cover, and I was only out there for 2 days. So I did do some videos of Cars Land at Christmas, which was really cool because
they had the dancing cars.
They had the dancing cars at Luigi's, and they were dancing to Christmas music, and just again, this is another case of, I know Disney World puts a lot into their Christmas decorations, holiday decorations, whatever, but there was an extra it factor with Disneyland, like how much attention to detail they paid.
I saw with the Halloween stuff, even they call it Halloween, Haulo.
Yeah,
it was amazing. I was like, I really want to go to Disneyland for Halloween. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it's just, and I'm certainly not trying to run down Disney World. That's always...
You better not. Those are them fighting words with me.
I'm not, but again, I think it comes down to only having 2 smaller parks to take care of, and not having to spread everything out over.
But overall, there's a lot more to see at Disney World.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot more to do.
Disneyland, I think once you've done it, once, you can pretty much spend 2 or 3 days there and you're good. Disney World, you can spend 2 weeks in Disney World and not do everything. Mm. So I think it probably depends on what you want out of your vacation. Now, Disneyland is, again, mostly locals, and if you go during the weekdays, which I think is, I was there during the weekday, it's not that busy until 3-4 o'clock when everybody gets out.
Not closer to holidays and stuff at Pixar.
Holidays, it gets busier. But mostly with Disneyland, it's you have a lot of locals. You're not going to have a huge influence. So if you're going to go and you're from out of state, go in on a weekday. And they're actually, I think they have some really good deals.
And take advantage of the 2 hour early.
Yeah, take advantage. Stay on property.
And apparently churros is like...
churros are a thing.
Everybody talks about Disney and churros. When you hear Disney and churros, it's because of Disneyland.
Yeah, so the churros. Yeah, there's like a churro stand.
It's like the cupcakes at Disney World.
Pretty much. There's like
cupcake,
a churro stand on every corner. Sadly, I did not buy a churro. I bought some churro-flavored popcorn.
That churro-flavored popcorn, he brought it home. It was so good. The kids, can you even get that at Disney World?
I don't know if it's
you
Disney
can't,
World.
I'm buying it because it is so good.
Yeah, it was...
This is the best thing I've ever had. It was so good.
But again, I think that's a cultural thing because we're in Southern California.
And churros, yeah.
And there's a lot of, Mexican influence in Southern California. So, they're going to have churros. They're going to have more, Tex-Mex type food. And the food's actually very good. A lot of restaurants out there were different. Not as many table service as, again, because, Disney World, you've got
table
all those
service
parks, and, Epcot especially has, like...
Yeah, almost every country has, like, table and a quick.
Right.
So, yeah.
But, I definitely... if you're a Disney fan, if you're a Disney World fan, you never have been to Disneyland, I think you need to take at least one trip.
I want to go. I mean, I didn't before, but when you came back, and some of the videos I did get to see when the thing worked, I was like, that's actually really cool. So I do want to see it.
Yeah, it's very compact. And I understand, and again, I'd forgotten because it had been so long since I've been there, just what it was like. And it started to come back to me, but I'm like, yeah, it does feel, it's a lot more compact, but it doesn't overwhelm you. I think Disney World...
It can be very overwhelming.
Can be very.
It doesn't have to be a first timer. It can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be very overwhelming, and it just feels the pace there just feels absolutely hectic. Disneyland, especially if you stay on property, it doesn't. You don't feel that rush, and because they don't have out there yet. They don't have the magic bands and all the booking your fast pass like 3 years in advance and all this other.
You have to plan everything you do. You have to,
No, Disneyland, and I understand that. People come to Disney World from Disneyland are like, wait, what do you mean I can't get on whatever ride because I didn't book
But you can, if you have to wait.
Right. But Disneyland, like, you just go and you just have a good time.
Yeah, so because Disney World, I love Disney World. I mean, I love it.
Oh, yeah,
but
absolutely.
it is. I mean, with the it's like from the moment you get up, it can be a hassle with the buses, with crowds,
and it's stress. There's there's a lot of, unfortunately.
You need a vacation from your vacation,
right? And I think Disney is trying very hard to minimize that with the gondolas and having the Ubers and the minivans and all that. The transportation is a huge stressor. I think they're trying to make it more stress free. But I will say, I honestly think Disneyland, if you're just going just to have fun. You're not gonna have the stress at Disneyland that you do at Disney World. However, the sacrifice is you're also not going to have nearly as much to do.
Right.
But I think the quality of time at Disneyland, depending on when you go, I think it just might be a better experience.
Now, when this airs, we'll actually be that day we'll be coming home because we're going to be in Magic Kingdom. We're actually recording this before we leave.
Right.
So we're going to take our first trip. That's just you and I. And I'm kind of curious to see how it is compared to when you take the kids and you have the kids with you and everything, and how it is when it's just you. So I'm kind of curious to compare that.
That would be an interesting, and we might do that as a podcast because there's been a lot of talk about going solo at Disney.
Well, you've done solo.
I've done solo a couple times.
I mean, real solo where you're by yourself.
Like completely by myself. And
you went clear across the country to do solo.
Yes, and I do that because of the media stuff that we do with Kingdom Insider. Sometimes I have to go by myself, and you can still have fun at a Disney park by yourself. It's not as much fun.
No, and I feel really guilty about not taking the kids. I've never gone without the kids, and I feel terrible.
But I mean, you can get on the rides easier. That's for sure.
I'm waiting to see what the difference is. So hopefully we're going to be coming back. While you're listening to this, we're probably either still at the Magic Kingdom or heading ourselves back to where we're from.
Yeah.
And then we'll have to do something when we talk about like our podcast. We can talk about what we did and what we saw and how it was.
Right. We're actually going to be live streaming from Walt Disney World.
Well, this is going to be after.
Oh yeah, so never mind. So
well, you might still catch it that
in
day.
March. That day. Well, if we get this between the February 5th and the 8th.
So this will be up on the 8th.
Right. We'll be in Walt Disney World if you go to the Pirates and Princesses Facebook page or the Kingdom Insider Facebook page.
Well, if you go to either one, you can see ones we've done.
Yeah, we live stream all the time. So.
And then we're going again in March. So
yes, we'll be there at the beginning of March,
the kids. And so we'll be doing that again, so you can catch that.
Yeah, so follow Pirates and Princesses and the Kingdom Insider.
Tell your friends. if you have anything you want to add, anything you want us to cover, please send that over. We'd love to hear what you have to say and any ideas you have.
Yeah, if you've got ideas for topics on the show, I mean,
or something you want to learn about, send it over.
We'll
do what we can. If we don't know, we'll find somebody who does.
If we don't know, we will find somebody who knows more about it than we do. It's piratespodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, and definitely give us a review if you can, and
Yeah, give us a review. Please give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. It definitely helps the show.
Okay.
So.
Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I think it's just go to Disneyland if you haven't been there. And if you're in Disneyland and you've never been to Disney World, go to Disney World. Try them both.
Yeah, don't worry. Don't think it's all bad and hectic like we made it out, because it's not.
No, it's not.
I still love Disney
Not
World.
at all. Not at all. It's just I was surprised at how chill it was. What I'm saying is, they're two different vacations. They're two different
locations. They're both Disney, but they're completely different.
Yes. So it's just because you've been to one does not mean you've been to the other, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So try them
check
both.
them both out. All right.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope. That's it.
Okay. We'll catch you later. Bye.
Pirates and Princesses is a production of Clownfish Studios. We are an unofficial Disney podcast, not endorsed or affiliated with the Walt Disney Company. You can visit us on the web at piratesandprincesses.net. That's piratesandprincesses.net. You can shoot us an email at piratespodcast@gmail.com. That's piratespodcast@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.